Hi, hello, hola, welcome. This is a video where I'll be recommending to you guys different comics, books, and movies to check out which retell the story of Snow White. All the retellings on this list are good retellings of Snow White, as you know from the title. However, I'm forewarning now that while they are good, they're not groundbreakingly amazing. Some of these can be dull and drag in places, but they will be solid and enjoyable stories which retell the story of Snow White, each in its own unique way. I have one other thing to say before I start. I have no plans to review the live-action Disney remake of the classic Snow White movie, as I know there'll be plenty of way smarter people than me who want to rage about how uncanny the dwarves are and how unnecessary it is to put millions of dollars into a shitty remake rather than a new and original movie. I chose to instead, for these reasons, put together a video recommending some good retellings of Snow White, some of which slightly flew under the radar and are overlooked, even though they were made with love and respect for the original source material, unlike some Disney movies which are coming out, so more people can check them out. That is the very video you're watching right now. And with all that said and done, it's time for the recommendation section of this video. Snow glass apples. Mirror, mirror on the wall, what is wrong with my stepdaughter? A not-so-evil queen cares deeply for the kingdom she rules over and loves her husband dearly, but her monstrous stepdaughter, Snow White, stands to destroy it all with her wicked nature and evil powers. This is a world where fairy tales are flipped on their head and happily ever after isn't so happy. Snow Glass Apples is a grim, dark fantasy horror graphic novel retelling the original story of Snow White, from the perspective of her evil stepmother, a kind woman who genuinely cares for her people, who is rightfully disturbed in this version of her stepdaughter. The art for this graphic novel really elevates the reading appearance as a whole, due to the beautiful art drawn in Nouveau art style, I think that's how you pronounce it, allowing it to really be unique and breathtaking in appearance, really immersing the reader in this idea of it being a fairy tale kingdom from times past, as well as showcasing the horror and lustful elements of this comic in a very unique fashion through the art style. Snow Glass Apples is an incredible retelling of the Brother Grimm's fairy tales, but it is not intended for child audiences. This book is intended for 16 plus audiences due to it having nudity, sex, blood, and other mature themes. I am aware of the allegations against Neil Graham, and I believe there is a legitimate claim that they are true. However, I do not think that this graphic novel deserves to be dismissed, as it was not just his own work, but also the work of that of Colleen Doran. Snow White is a fair and kind princess, oppressed by her wicked stepmother, unable to obtain any form of true power, as are all the people of the kingdom ever since her father passed away. For years she lived oppressed, but cast aside into the shadows by her stepmother, all but forgotten, made to be a servant within her own palace, until her stepmother is informed that Snow White is more beautiful than she. Angry that she is no longer the most fair lady in the land, and envious of Snow White, who is fairer than she, the wicked queen summons her huntsman and tells him to kill her stepdaughter. However, the huntsman is unable to kill Snow White due to her fair and kind nature, so he instead warns her, allowing the princess to run into the woods and escape from her wicked stepmother's grasp. Within the woods, she meets 7 dwarfs who work as miners and allow her to seek refuge from the wicked queen within their home. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs is the original animated feature-length film from Disney. It's predictable, tropey, and I absolutely love it. It's got love and passion poured into every second of it. The characters, while a little flat in the writing department, are all memorable with great voice actors and designs. And lastly, the painted backgrounds and gorgeously animated animals are just so as well as the simplistic but stunning designs for the characters that are all unique and memorable, whilst allowing the readers to pinpoint who they are and their role within the story with great ease. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs is a film appropriate for all audiences, and is the Disney film which you should check out if you're in the mood for some classic Disney magic, especially with this coming. Snow White, Mirror, Mirror, a Twisted Tale.
On the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Snow White is the neglected stepdaughter of the queen who keeps her head down and acts no different than the shadows of the past. Snow believes everyone has forgotten her, but Snow's stepmother and the kingdom's people have not forgotten the princess, heir to the throne, and by law must be crowned when she turns 18 years old. The wicked queen doesn't wish to relinquish even a fraction of her power, and so her stepmother sets in motion a plan to kill her stepdaughter in order to remain queen. But the plan goes awry and allows Snow to escape beyond her stepmother's control. During this time, she learns new details pertaining to her parents and her stepmother's role in the fates that befell them. With the help of 7 kind dwarfen brothers, Snow is able to survive within the woods. However, as her knowledge around the treatment of her people within the kingdom increases, she realizes she must lead a rebellion and take her throne from her wicked stepmother so that they may prosper once more. With the help of a charming prince and a kind yet familiar stranger, her rebellion seems to have a legitimate chance of succeeding. However, Snow's stepmother knows this and won't just hurt her stepdaughter in a bid to stop it, but also the one she loves, all in a bid just to retain power. Mirror Mirror is a twisted tale which retells the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs with a much more gritty and mature plotline. It has alternating perspectives from Snow White in the present day and Ygritte, the Wicked Queen, in the past. Snow is a great character with a well-written and defined personality. A lot of details present within the movies about her get expanded upon, like how she likes birds and singing as they were something her mother enjoyed, and how the chores she does is actually how she managed to survive a childhood spent imprisoned and forgotten within the palace. And for the other half of the story, we have Ygritte, the evil queen. Her chapters showcase her backstory. It's a really good and personally my favourite parts of the books. It makes the readers root for her and wish for her to have a happy ending, all while aware she will become the wicked queen and commit some truly evil and heinous acts. The transformation from Ygritte, an understandable and sympathetic person, to the evil queen, a wicked and vile person whose goals are to gain wealth and power in order to better her and her life alone, is a little sudden, but the existence of the mirror, which is clearly changing her and pushing her into her darkest desires, helps smooth that over. A complaint I hear parroted about this book is that it repeats scenes from the original film, and I want to say that's a non-issue. Look, this is a retelling of the movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, so there will be scenes in the book which copies the movie and changes very little because the book is a retelling of the movie and will copy from its source material. Furthermore, I think these scenes highlight the differences between the two, even if only some changes are done to some characters, help showcase the changes for this retelling and let the readers readjust their perspectives for these changes, even if only minor changes. And a second thing I want to touch upon, which is a flaw within the book, is that the dwarves do not have any characteristics beyond their very basic and stereotypical personalities, which is true and it is a flaw. However, this is the same for the movies. The dwarfs are mainly there to forward the plot, showcase Snow White's personality, be used for a few funny gags, and be in the title. This is not the case for all the characters. By being a retelling, they do expand upon some characters, even if not all of them are given this treatment. And I'm not just talking about the evil Queen Ygritte, but also Prince Charming himself, or Hendrik, within this story. Hendrik is fleshed out, no longer just the charming lamppost for girls to crush on. In Mirror Mirror, he came here to help his own people and get a treaty reassessed with the Queen, and happens to fall in love with Snow due to common interests in nature, and over the course of the book, Prince Hendrik develops a deep-rooted sense of duty to aid others, which is his arc, thanks to Snow's own deep-rooted need to do so, rubbing off on him. Thirdly, Mirror Mirror has a bit of a pacing problem. The pacing is very good, but it's rushed in a few places, especially at the end. However, even with all its faults, this is a very good retelling of Snow White, especially if you're into villain origin stories and witchcraft. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the most beautiful of them all? Yes, you. You are. What? Prince Snow is the fairest, most beautiful person in all of the lands, and he knows it. Anything he wants, he can get thanks to his good looks and seemingly good personality. All except the one thing he wants most of all, to be rid of his wicked stepmother. But the feeling of wanting to be rid of each other is mutual, and his stepmother wants him gone as well. So she puts together a plan in order for him to get married off to Princess Briar, only princess and heir to the throne of the neighbouring kingdom of Fawn. Princess Briar is a towering sullen woman with a far from sociable personality, not helping with the bad reputation she's gotten from being seen as a monster from those beyond the kingdom's border when trying to find a true love. Upon meeting Prince Snow, she is certain he is her true love and declares it to be so, but Prince Snow thinks she's a monster. Briar realizes this shortly after, however she needs to be married and fast, whereas Snow's stepmother is forcing him to go through with the marriage. So even if not certain of the other's true feelings and motives, neither party can back out of the wedding without losing things they hold very dear. Snow and Briar is a romantic comedy webtoon which is a mashup between Sleeping Beauty and Snow White, as well as having archetypes from other fairy tales such as Beauty and the Beast, for its dynamic between Briar the Beast, because she's this towering muscular woman, even though that's hot, not gonna lie, who's not great at socializing, and Snow the Beauty, because he's got the gorgeous appearance down hard and a seemingly good personality. Snow is a bit unbearable due to his spoiled and childish personality at the start, but the reasons for why he's like this, alongside the expansion of him as a person, as well as his growth throughout the comics so far, have made him more likable and enduring as a protagonist. Beyond Snow and Briar, we have a cast of characters with great writing that expand upon the main leads, as it allows readers to see why the main leads are the way they are from their treatment of them, as well as the characters being very good and funny, especially the servant to Snow White's stepmother, her sexiness. Yeah, this comic is fucking hilarious. From character interactions to visual gags, Snow and Briar is a webtoon which utilizes every aspect of its medium in order to tell the story in as funny a way as possible. The romance between Snow and Briar is very much relevant in the form of an arranged marriage, as people believe they are each other's true loves. In spite of this, we know that neither of them is certain in this decision or actually wants to get married, with Snow being blackmailed into it and Briar needing to be married and fast. Both are forced to cast aside their own personal feelings, but Briar does actively try and make this relationship work, spending time with him at meals and parties. However, Snow is terrified of her, not helping this budding romance is the fact that his stepmother, who he hates and is terrified of, is actively pushing for it in the beginning to be rid of Snow. It's clear that Snow and Briar's personal growth will reflect the growth of their relationship. As Briar gains self-confidence and Snow starts to look beyond preconceived notions of people, this places the romance between Snow and Briar into being solidly that of a slow burn variety. Snow and Briar is a romance webtoon perfect for fans of fairy tale retelling, slow burns, and romantic comedies. Girls made of snow and glass. At 16, Mina's mother is dead. Her magician father is vicious, and her silent heart has never beat with love for anyone. Has never beat at all, in fact. But she'd always thought that fact was normal. She never guessed that her father cut out her heart and replaced it with one made of glass. When she moves to White Spring Castle and sees the king for the first time, Mina forms a plan. Win the king's heart with her beauty, become queen, and finally, at long last, she'll know love. The only catch is she'll have to become a stepmother. 15-year-old Lynette looks just like her late mother, and one day she discovers why a magician created her out of snow in the dead queen's image at her father's order. But despite being the image of the dead queen, Lynette would much rather be like her fierce and regal stepmother Mina. And she gets her wish when her father makes Lynette queen of the Southern Territories, displacing Mina. Now Mina is starting to look at Lynette with something like hatred, and Lynette must decide what to do and what to be, to win back the only mother she's ever known, or else defeat her once and for all. Intertwining the stories of both Lynette and Mina is the past and the present. Girls Made of Snow and Glass traces the relationships of two young women, doomed to be rivals from the start. Only one can win all, while the other must lose everything, unless they can find a way to reshape themselves and their story. Girls Made of Snow and Glass is a feminist fantasy retelling of the fairy tale Snow White. This is a story with many things: magic, romance, and political intrigue. However, the core of this story is the mother-daughter relationship between Mina and Lynette. The relationship between the two is nuanced and complicated, both clearly love and care for each other, and whilst there is tension within it, with Mina being insecure in their relationship in places and Lynette fearing Mina may no longer love her, the evil stepmother trope is subverted, and subverted spectacularly. Lynette and Mina are both characters who have arcs and stand on their own 2 feet apart from one another, even if the mother-daughter bond is the main relationship and point of focus for the narrative. Lynette is a princess and daughter of the late queen, desperate to be seen as her own person, but made by nearly everyone in her life, especially her father, to be reminded constantly of the mother for whom she was made to be a copy of, a mother she never met. Mina has no friends or even family beyond her father, who treats her with cruelty and disregard. Throughout the whole story, Mina and Lynette are denied the right to forge their own paths, made by others to be who they desire them to be. Both girls' father have used them and tried to make them into people who they don't wish to be, all for their own happiness. This is very much a story about coming into your own, figuring out who you want to be and who you will be. The fact that both fathers attempt to forge their daughters into people they don't want to be ties into a feminist themes running throughout the book, playing parallels to how fathers would historically stifle their daughters and stop them from doing things they enjoyed to ensure they were perfect daughters and eventual wives for the husbands that they chose. I really like that in terms of metaphors, and how it bleeds into the rest of the book, with the emphasis placed on the importance of female relationships, and how even with the men in their lives trying to control how they act as people, relating to those around them and still having connections between themselves and other women has the power to go beyond that control. And topping it all off, the book has several character arcs running throughout the stories. Some characters change, some characters do not, with the two most important being, of course, Lynette and Mina. I touched a little on their arcs earlier, but that's mainly in broad themes they have and the relationship between the pair. I'm going to expand upon the arcs each has here. Lynette's arc is one of finding agency and identity. Throughout the story, she is forced to grapple with the fact that she is a clone of her first mother, a woman she never met, yet haunts her as a person as she finds herself tackling questions such as how much of her is a copy of her mother and how does she forge her own identity. Over the course of this story, she finds answers to these questions as she finds inner strength and bravery. Then we have Mina's arc, who, full disclosure, is my favourite character of the two. Mina's arc is complex, not saying Lynette's isn't, just saying that Mina's is much more complex. Mina isn't a morally ambiguous character so much as she just makes questionable decisions, stemming from her internalized self-hatreds, and yet still has the confidence in herself and her decision. It makes her a much more interesting character to follow, in my opinion. This is purely a me thing, though. Some people will definitely prefer Lynette, and that's 100% understandable. Both characters have incredibly interesting and complex arcs. Beyond that, both Mina and Lynette have a love interest and a love subplot running throughout the book, which allows us to see other parts of them as people as we see how they develop love and express it. And there's also a plot to do with magic running throughout the story, which is used by the author to tie into the mythology of Snow White by having Lynette made of snow and Mina having magic mirror powers, which ties into not just parallels with the original Wicked Queen and stepmother, but also the plot. It's all very involved and convoluted and spoilerly, and this brings up actually one of the flaws within the book, because just as much as I love Girls Made of Snow and Glass, this book has a very big and very glaring flaw: the plot, or lack thereof. This is very much a character-driven story, but it leads to there just not being much plot beyond those characters. There is an attempt by the author to make one, but it's not very good. There are bits and pieces clobbered together, and towards the end you can really see the story struggling with this, as the author rushes to compensate for the rest of the story lacking a plot to make a good ending, but it's not good. An example of this is the use of the politics in the books. We are told that Mina is the queen of the southern territories of the kingdom, and a very good one at that, but we never see much of why she's considered to be a good queen. What policies has she made over her ruling of the lands, and why? How is she able to rule the northern territories from within the southern territories? Who are her advisors? Why are they her advisors? And this isn't just for the political subplot, but we also have issues to do with the magic subplot, such as how the south is warm whereas the north is cold due to some unknown curse, and for some reason the nobility remain within the north, presumably due to traditions, but nothing about it is expanded upon outside of them being there for a very long time, so they stay. It's very shallow world building and makes the plot itself shallow. In spite of these faults, Girls Made of Snow and Glass is an incredibly well-written, character-driven story based on the original Snow and White fairy tales, while still having a very original take on the mythos with a mother-daughter bond at the heart of the story. These are all the Snow White retellings that I've checked out and enjoyed. Please comment down below if you have checked any of these Snow White retellings out and what you enjoyed about them. And if you didn't enjoy them, why? Please remember to like and subscribe. If you enjoy this video, I have other recommendation/review videos on my channel, which I will link in the pinned comment. And my channel has speed edits available as well, which you can check out via clicking on my channel page. You will see a few immediately as they are my most common content. Thanks for watching.